everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We have an exciting topic for you today. We're going to be talking about clean core in SAP S4. These are transport management best practices, and I'm going to be bringing my guest for today is going to be Valdrin Spihii. He's an ALM architect working for CoreALM, and he's going to be sharing with us some best practices. We actually also published a newsletter. I'll give you a link to that newsletter later in today's broadcast. It talks about some of these concepts as well, how you can maintain clean core within SAP, and what are some of the challenges. Sometimes it's not only about tools. It requires a good setup of your process and understanding your end-to-end business process solution, including SAP and non-SAP code. Valdrin will take us through that topic, but just as an introduction to CoreALM, in case you're new to us, I'm going to start by walking through a little bit of our history, how we got to where we are, and our experience, and what we do to the market. So we started about 15 years ago. Company was started when our CEO and founder left his position as the ALM practice lead at SAP. So many of our team actually came from SAP, worked there first, and then founded and joined CoreALM. So what our CEO noticed when he surveyed the landscape from his position as a practice lead for ALM at SAP is that there was really no service provider that was in that space of providing full service ALM services at the time, specifically for SAP customers, and really founded SAP to do just that. Founded CoreALM, I should say, to do just that. And since that time, it was about 2018, we really saw an opportunity, because what we observed is that all of our customers were using SAP as a very central component of their architecture, of course, but there's always other applications that need to be integrated with the SAP in order to deliver a full end-to-end business process. And for those other applications, companies use different tools, tools like ServiceNow, tools like Jira, Azure DevOps for projects. And so we saw an opportunity to integrate those tools with SAP's ALM tools. At the time, it was Solution Manager. Now we have Cloud ALM on the scene. And so we support direct integrations with those tools. And that's really kind of been our bread and butter and what's driven us forward and given us that kind of view. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. We've been, serving some of SAP's largest customers, very complex integrations, whether it's financial, very strict security requirements, same for military and defense, whether it's like pharma and validated processes for life sciences. We've pretty much covered it all, big and small, but quite a variety of customers that have been using our services and running on our platform for a long period of time at this point in time. So that's gone very well for us. I'm just going to give some background on the way that we think about business transformations. And business transformation, that could be a big change or that could be a small maintenance change, but in all cases, there should be some thought to what is the continuous innovation cycle, because innovation really comes when you first understand and see that your business process needs to be optimized. And so the starting point should really be looking at what are those process improvements that I need to make as a business in order to deliver, the changes that are really the highest priority changes with the kind of results that I need to be able to get in order for my business to progress. And then, of course, once that's decided, you go into a project mode. Could be a small project, could be just a patch or a little enhancement or a maintenance update. So really all of those are available, could be system upgrade. But you need to somehow keep track of the work items and the activities, and that's the kind of middle section. And then at the end, there's the deployment aspects of transport management and then ongoing operations. So whether you're monitoring those systems and could be job monitoring, the more the technical monitoring side of things, or it could be business process monitoring or end user monitoring to make sure that the users are actually getting the results that they set out to achieve when you started doing your plan improvement ideas. Of course, to manage all of these activities, it takes a lot of different capabilities, and those capabilities are available in a lot of different tools. And what we see is that many of our customers use quite an array of different tools as part of their landscape. CloudALM covers a lot of this if you're using SAP, but most people use CloudALM primarily just to manage activities in SAP, but not for other, digital activities that they have going on. Maybe some BTP stuff, but it's all kind of SAP related. Then there's tools like LeanIX, Signavio, Tricentis that come, from SAP that extend the capabilities of CloudALM and give you extra ability to manage process, system capabilities, test automation, change impact analysis. And then, of course, most companies are using tools like Jira or Azure DevOps to manage their pipelines, their DevOps processes, CI/CD or projects. And then ServiceNow is often used for change and release management. And so all of these tools kind of have a different role, but there's a lot of overlap between these tools. And if you just use these tools independently, there's usually duplication of effort, inconsistent results in terms of, people copying and pasting or extra effort. Without integration, you can end up with quite a disconnected process. And what we often see is that people use one set of tools for SAP and another set of tools for the rest of the entire enterprise. And so at CoreALM, our mission is to provide that unification layer that just stitches everything together so you can have one consistent process, whether it's for projects or whether it's for ongoing maintenance changes, that allows you to have a cohesive end-to-end process with no compromise on the compliance associated with it, the data associated with those changes, but using the tools that you already have that are enterprise-wide and stitching it together with capabilities that exist only in the SAP toolset. So that's our goal. And to do that, we have really three sets of connectors. Solution Manager has been around for a long time, so we've been supporting that, and we've had great success with that. CloudALM is on the scene. It doesn't have all of the capabilities that Solution Manager has, and so we have those connectors, and we offer as much as what is available in CloudALM. You can integrate those with Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow, but we also have direct integrations for more advanced functions like transport management capabilities that used to be in Charm, but that are no longer available or not yet available as part of CloudALM. And these tools are all interoperable. And so you can build from this, they're designed to work together. You can build a cohesive process, including CloudALM if you want or without. So those are the options going forward. And that's really what I wanted to share in terms of what we do, but how we do it is important to understand. Our goal is to really accelerate the change workflows. And so in your enterprise system, you may have different states that you use to manage those changes. For that, we provide shift left automations that allow you to do things like automated code checks, transport sequence dependencies, digital signatures, and you can synchronize cloud-based transports with SAP movements. So all of that is available as part of our platform. At this stage, I think it'd be a good time to introduce Valjin, who can take us through some of those details on how this works from a clean core perspective. So Valjin, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Steve, do you want to make me a presenter?
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course I do. There you go. You should have access now.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Valjin Spahia, one of the solution architects here at CoreALM. And in today's agenda, our goal is to walk you through the clean core principles and the key benefits of utilizing it And then the next topic is going to be around introduction to CoreALM transport management and how it can support the clean core. In addition to that, we're also going to go through a use case scenario of the transport management best practices through this demonstration, which will kind of give you an idea how the tool works, with different integration points to some of the areas that Steve mentioned, such as ServiceNow, ADO, and Jira as well. And to dive right into the topic, so the goal to address the clean core strategy, there's really 5 topics that when we look at clean core and how you can adapt those 5 different strategies within your landscape. One of them, and these don't necessarily all of them apply to our product, but there's different products that you can utilize to achieve a clean core within your strategy. One of the main ones that we always start with is going to be around business processes. And really the goal is here, how do you standardize and keep your business processes as standard as possible? This is where you, for example, regardless of the type of tool that you're using, if it's CloudALM, SAP Solution Manager, or any other tool out there that supports business processes such as business process hierarchy and BPML, the goal is to primarily to utilize those standard business processes and best practices from SAP. Therefore, for example, at any given time when you're implementing something, you're not deviating far away from the standard business process. And this is really going to help. It will help you to integrate that clean core strategy from the beginning, rather than having to start with customizations from a business process perspective. The second one, and this is where really the CoreALM can help with, is around the extensibility. So at any given time, for example, when you have any type of extensibility that you have to, let's say, develop, or that you have to create in addition to meet your business requirements, at that point, this is where you would want to avoid those extensions as much as possible. And in order for you to stay on the clean core strategy as much as possible, this is where, for example, we can offer for you to be able to either develop and create certain applications on stack or side by side by using, for example, BTP. This will, within our integrations that we'll go through, this is where we can offer some different approaches in order for you to be able to govern this strategy and really adopt the clean core concept as well. The third one, this is around the data, for example, and how do you control your data according to the latest standards, primarily on ensuring that you don't have a large amount of data volume or outdated data or unused that you don't necessarily need within the environment, where it will just increase the time where you, for example, have to do any type of updates and etc. The idea would be that you can use different types of tools. Primarily, there's a couple, for example, such as SAP CloudALM, where, for example, you could utilize such as a SAP readiness check, or you could use integration exception monitoring, for example, in order for you to determine some type of data quality issues that you may have within your environment. So also within the CloudALM, there's a feature on there called SAP Readiness Check, where it could primarily help you on determine the quality issues that you have, and then from that point on, you could start by cleaning up that data in order for you to reduce the amount of unused data that you have within your environment, also including the quality as well. The fourth one is around to ensure that you have a landscape, for example, that's using the latest integrations, such as using standard APIs, and you're not necessarily still using RFCs and IDOCs when you don't have to, for example. So especially if you have a concept where you have maybe a integration suite where you could use the APIs or the side-by-side extensibility rather than using something like RFCs or IDOC. This will ensure, for example, that you are able to stay as standard as possible rather than depending on those RFCs and IDOCs, which have a high probability of failures. And the last one here, which is more on the operations side, primarily on many areas where you could integrate different types of monitoring use cases in order to ensure that you're monitoring your entire environment, but also very important that you always stay on the latest SAP releases, for example, so that way you're not very far behind in order for you to stay in the latest technology that SAP releases as well. Now, on the next slide in here, we're and what we're primarily going to talk to today about is going to be how CoreALM can help you the extensibility and for you to be able to maintain applications both on ABAP, also stack, and also side-by-side BTP. So now with CoreALM Transport Management, this is primarily where we can integrate both in Cloud TMS and also on the STMS as well. You could have both of landscapes running, for example, in parallel. So at any given time when you're building something on side-by-side or you building something in Cloud Foundry within BTP, the idea would be that, for example, you're able to use a Cloud TMS and create those changes within the same tool as well. This will allow you to minimize, I would say, the custom code and modifications that you will create within your, let's say, ABAP environments, and rather you would depend on that integration as well if it's available. We have really 3 different tools that can integrate with the SAP TMS and SAP Cloud TMS, which is going to be ServiceNow, Jira, or Azure DevOps. And this is a direct integration, for example, that can support both your SAP environments and also your hybrid environments, for example, anything that you build in addition to SAP, such as in Cloud Foundry and etc. Now, to go through a couple of the TMS integration overview and how the tool works. So it's a direct integration with SAP Transport Management, both for TMS and STMS. And then also you can manage transports directly from Azure DevOps, ServiceNow, or Jira. And it also, in addition to that, what you can do is mainly for the TMS side, you can create transports, you can release transports, you can import them, and you can also re-import them. But in addition to that, we also have additional features such as transport coupling and decoupling, transport of copies, cross-system object lock, downgrade protection, mass transport deployment, and retrofit and repack as well. There's also multi deployment options and no additional infrastructure required as well for this implementation of the product. Now, from the ServiceNow integration perspective, once we deploy this application within your ServiceNow, at that point, there's multiple ways for you to be able to add this additional new tab to manage the transports. However, one of the recommendations is that you have a additional tab within your ServiceNow screen. At that point, at any given time when you have a normal change, urgent change, or a standard change, as long as you have this tab in there, you should be able to have different types of options for you to be able to create a transport, release a transport, and etc. Now, we also, in addition to that, any of these options that are within this screen are controlled based on the status of that change. So it's completely modifiable that you can do within the UI of the integration itself. Now, there's also an additional option where you can have a restrictive or an optional status-based workflow, for example. And then the next slide here, I'm going to show you, for example, how you can achieve if you wanted to have a restrictive control of the ServiceNow integration. So an example here is a standard integration or a standard workflow of the ServiceNow that contains a ServiceNow change task. And then, for example, at any given time when it's in assess, you can have a specific ServiceNow change task where, for example, in this case, within this change task, you can have different types of options that you could add to the screen. And those options could be, for example, when you're in development, you could create a transport, you could create a task, couple a transport if required, and also decouple a transport as well. In addition to that, when you move on into the next status, which is to be tested, you could also create and import the transport of copies. Also, in successfully tested, once you are done with your testing, for example, let's say within your unit test client or your testing environment, at that point you could release a transport and you could import it within QA as well. So it's completely controllable by the different statuses that you have within your change task. Now, at that point, you could build some type of workflow, for example, and that's something that they could help you as well, where once a change task is complete, it automatically goes to authorize. And at this point, in most standard scenarios, this is where the CAB or the approval comes in order for us to implement that change into a production environment. So it really will follow your, most likely if you're using ServiceNow with its standards, for example, this workflow should follow that standard as well. However, keep in mind, you can customize this on the ServiceNow side, and we could map any of these items in here to any ServiceNow workflow that you have within your environment. Now, in addition to that, just to kind of go through the use case, once you're in implement, this is where, for example, we would create a second change task or the same change task, and then you could have the option to import that change into a productive environment, and then at that point, you could review it and close it. But again, this is just a use case scenario, and to kind of inform you how flexible the TMS integration and the workflow would be with the TMS integration that we have. And this would work for both the Cloud TMS, for example, and also for the TMS as well. Just keep in mind there's some limitations with the Cloud TMS as far as, for example, creating a TR and etc. So, but other than that, most of the options such as release, import, and etc. will be all possible for both tools. Now, in addition to that, there's also from a Jira integration. So let's say if you're not using ServiceNow, but you're more of a Jira shop, at this point, the Jira works almost similar to the ServiceNow side, where you'll have a new custom tab added for the transport details, and then you'll have all of the different options in here towards the bottom. You'll have a SAP transport tab, and then you'll have the options to create a transport couple, decouple, also import it as well. So you could pretty much manage all of the transport directly in here. It's very similar to what I showed you in ServiceNow. You could also have a restrictive workflow. So meaning, for example, depending on what status of Jira you are of the issue, let's say, for example, you're in development. At that point, you want to allow users to be able to create a transport and also maybe also create a transport of copies. Also, in addition to that, if, for example, when you are in status like ready for production and etc., you can allow it where, for example, you will have an import option in here for you to be able to import transports into a productive environment. So that's all possible within the integration. Also, all of these options that I'm referring to, they will be within a configuration page, and no coding is required for you to be able to map these to different statuses. Now, in addition to that, when we look at the different types of statuses, and especially if it's status-based transport control, as I mentioned, this is where, for example, you would have those specific restrictive statuses that you can be controlled only within the status. Now, also in Azure DevOps, so the process is very similar. This is in this case what I'm showing all of the different options in here. So an example is if you don't decide to go with a restrictive workflow and what options you can execute within that status, you would have something like this. Imagine that if you have, for example, a Azure work item, and then you have all of the different statuses that you could run from creating a transport to all the way releasing it, and also maybe importing it into multiple environments within the same status. But again, it's still a controlled workflow, which we have a login and etc. So at any given time, any user that executes any of these workflows will automatically be logged within that work item for you to go and review later who imported the transport and etc. Now, there's some additional features that we have for the integration that we support transport groups. So if you have multiple groups within the transport, also add in any new tasks in an existing transport request. So if you want to go back and just add an additional task to a transport, that is possible. Refreshing the status of transports in Jira, Azure DevOps, or ServiceNow. So for example, once you execute an import, if it takes a long time, you could refresh its status directly within the ticket rather than navigating into the SAP environment. We also have some special handling, such as pre and post import checklist. An example is that if you have anything that you have to do, you have to run some type of report after you have implemented the transport. You can have some type of post import checklist that will be as a call out after you import that transport into a target environment. You also have re-import options, so if in case a transport fails and it's still available for import, you can utilize the re-import option directly from the tool. And then also we have an authorization check in SAP. So an example is if a user does not exist in the dev environment, therefore that you will not be able to create an SAP transport. What this means is that you don't, not everyone in the company is allowed to create an SAP transport if they don't exist within that SAP environment. Also, in addition to that, you can map, especially Jira and Azure DevOps, for example, you can map multiple landscapes within the Jira project or Azure project as well. You can fetch the user list from SAP and display that in the front end. So an example, instead of you type in a wrong name within the change ticket, you would automatically can fetch all of the users and then assign a transport to a specific user, for example, especially if you're using specific usernames and etc. And then there's also mass import and retrofit as well that we support within the tool. Okay, in the next 10-15 minutes, I'm going to go through a demonstration. What we're going to walk through today is we're going to go through a ServiceNow use case scenario. But if you're interested, we can also always do a demonstration of Jira and Azure DevOps as well. So, and also, for example, we'll come back to the dashboard, but we'll go through also how you can see all of the information after we have created the transport and etc. So what we're going to go through is creating a normal change today. And then I'll walk through all of the different options that you have in here. So this is just a standard normal change in ServiceNow. So now within the screen, once you start filling up the information within ServiceNow, you'll have this option as an SAP change, yes or no. Again, this can be any type of checkbox, etc., that you decide to add to your form within ServiceNow. It doesn't necessarily have to be the specific one. However, this is what determines if you want to have the integration available where, for example, now you want to create a transport. And really the goal is here that you can continue to use your standard, normal, standard urgent changes as is. And by default, you can have this as an option as no. So for example, the entire company or the enterprise can continue to use the normal change as is. You don't necessarily have to have a custom one just for the SAP side. However, at any given time, when you have a user that is trying to make a change within the SAP environment, you would click on yes in here, and then you will automatically get the SAP option in here with, for example, to create a transport. So what I'm going to do, you'll see that, for example, because I haven't saved this yet, you'll have multiple options in here, but what I'll do is I'll go ahead and save this. And then once I set this to assess, you'll see that I'll have some different options in here for me to execute. One of the first options that you have is obviously we need to create a transport initially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on create transport, and then it's going to ask me first to provide some type of description in here. So then here, for example, this is where you could have different types of environments. So again, we can integrate, if you have any type of cloud TMS, especially to support the clean core concept, if you're building anything in BTP, Cloud Foundry, or if you have any type of even such as integration suite, for example, if you have any type of transports that you manage in, you would have all of those environments available directly in here. And then you could also have multiple transports for different environments too. So, but my first step is that we're going to go ahead and create a transport within this TRI environment. And then you decide, for example, what type of transport you're going to create. This is, for example, where I am going to go ahead and search for my name within the environment, and then we'll just give it a second. It's going to go back and it's going to run a check against my SAP environment to ensure that my user exists in here. And once that check runs, then I should get a response back here with my user. So it's just taking a little bit longer than anticipated, but again, it's making a check to the backend system. Let me try a different user in here. Okay, I think it came back. Okay. And then also what I want to do is I also want to associate a task as well to my user. So I'm going to add that user. And this is where you have some multiple options to also do if you need to run any type of prerequisite checks, such as before you import the TR or after importing the TR, such as reports and etc. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on create. Once you do that, it's going to create the transport automatically for me in the back here. In addition to that, it's also going to create the transport task and assign it to my name as well. Now, you'll also you have these different options in here, but what you'll notice is that once, for example, I release a specific task, you'll notice that then I'll have some options to create a TOC and etc. as well. So we'll just go ahead and release that task very quickly. Then I'm going to go ahead and refresh the screen in here. And then we'll just give it a second and it should read this data in here. You also have some refresh options in here, for example. So now, as you see, now I have a create and import a transport of copies. Once I select that option in there, what it's going to do is going to go ahead and import this specific request into my next target environment. And then you will also notice that these options in here, such as last import and etc., will automatically populate within this screen. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a select that refresh option again, just to determine if the TOC was created. So what you'll see in here that a TOC was created will automatically update the stable here at the bottom with a TOC and the TOC number and etc. and what environment it was imported in. Now the next option in here is that for me to move this into a QA environment, I'm going to go ahead and release a TR by selecting it. And then once I refresh it, so you always want to give it a couple of seconds in here in order for that action to happen in the background. And then once it's released, for example, then you'll see the option in here that for this specific environment, the transport was released. And now the next action is that we're going to go ahead and import this change into my environment, in my QA environment. Once you click on import, you'll have the different transport options in here. So for example, if you wanted to override originals and etc., these are some of the advanced use cases that you usually get within the SDMS. What you want to do is you can select any of these options and then it will actually execute them in the background. If not, what you can do is you can proceed as normal with that import of the transport, for example, and then what we'll do is we'll go ahead, once that transport is imported, we'll see an option in here that it was last imported. So we'll continue to click that refresh option in here. And then what you'll see the log in here, for example, when was the last import, what environment, what time. So you'll have all of the different logs directly within the screen in here, what was executed. Now, this is for given the fact that we have a 3-tier environment in my landscape, for example, what I'm going to do is in order for me to import this into my productive environment, I want to go ahead and move this change into an implement status. Therefore, it's approved by CAB and etc. So what I'll do in here is I'll go ahead and, for example, I'll approve this change. And then there should be one additional change, for example, as a manager, I approved it. Now I'm going to approve this as CAB as well. And then I'm also going to go ahead and set it to implement status. Once I'm in the status at this point, I have the option for me to import this change into my production environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on import. And then once this transport is imported, then this last import will change to my final environment, for example, and then I can go ahead and close this change as well. So as you see now, this transport was imported in my client, which is 99 in this example, and then it's already imported within my production environment. And the next step is really your standard steps, which in this case, for example, you're going to go into your review status. And then once you're in your review status, you'll notice that, for example, all of my options in here are, I don't have those available anymore, such as an import and etc. However, we do have, for example, such as retrofit analysis, reject, manual, or retrofit initiate. So if this was applicable for a retrofit, we do have an automatic retrofit option in here, for example, where we can import it into the next environment. But initially what we want to do is we would run a retrofit analysis within this transport, for example. And then what you'll also notice here towards the bottom is that we'll have an additional check in here in order for us to retrofit this environment. And as you can see, this is not relevant for retrofit at this point. So it did an analysis. And at this point, this transport, it's not applicable to import it into this client 100. However, for example, if it's available for retrofit, at that point, you have an option here to select it and also import this specific transport into that environment automatically. Also, you have the option to reject it, to retrofit it manually. So especially if you do have some type of conflict where, for example, we need to import on only certain objects and etc. At that point, you can mark it as a retrofit manual rather than having to automatically import this into that, let's say, N+1 or N+2 environment. At this point, we can close the change, and pretty much the change is imported into your production environment. Now, the last but not least is within your ServiceNow, for example, or also Jira and Azure DevOps, you can have different types of dashboards that we pre-deliver with the integration. However, you can also completely customize these dashboards as well in addition to what we have. But some of the main areas or some of the main dashboards and I would say widgets that we look at is primarily, how many SAP changes you have, how many changes are overdue, for example, that maybe have not been approved or have been sitting in a dev environment. how many SAP changes you have waiting for approval, and etc. And then you also have, you could do some different types of risk and priority cards, for example, how many you have in high and how many, for example, are critical as well, that are sitting within that status as well. It also, we have some dashboards such as where, for example, it shows how many changes are closed per month as well. So therefore, you kind of have an idea how many changes you're executing per month as well. Now you can also get more specific, for example. So if you just wanted to look at changes specifically to your S4 environment, let's say, or to a specific environment that you have within your landscape, this is where we can create an additional widget in here that shows you each one of the cards in here for specific environments, how many total transports you have, how many have been imported in your queue, how many do you have in your production as well. This will give you an idea that are you importing every single transport that the development team or configuration team is creating in dev, but are they actually importing that into the production environment as well in order to keep that in sync. This is what we wanted to show you today. Gonna go back into the presentation here and pass it back on to Steve. And I thank you and I appreciate your time for attending.
Wow, that was a lot of content. Thank you, Waldron. I'll ask that if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat. Don't be shy. We would happily answer any of the questions that you might have. Though there are a few that are already entered. I do see people are asking about this tool that you just shared with us. Installation, what is the process to get that going, set up, and then how long does it take to become operational?
So it depends on, for example, if you're using Jira, ServiceNow, or Azure DevOps. Even though they are very similar to each other, they're fairly easy to deploy. For each one of them, for example, application is posted on the store from the Jira, ServiceNow, or Azure DevOps. And for the backend, for example, they will also deploy this within one of your environments that we will connect with your Jira or one of these third-party tools. But it's a fairly straightforward deployment, and you should be up and running fairly quickly once we have it in your environment.
Are we talking months, days, weeks? What would you say? Days. Okay, awesome. Good to know. So you sort of talked about this, but I just want to make sure that it's clear. Obviously, one of the challenges with Clean Core, like you said, is I'm going to have changes, let's say, to configuration, but I'm also going to have a change in BTP that corresponds maybe with, could be a middleware change in CPI. It could be an extension and the side-by-side extensions as part of your Cloud Foundry. And then all of those would require, basically could be tied to one particular user story or one particular change request. So is it possible to take all of those different transports, some in the cloud, some in SAP, and bundle them together, even non-SAP code? Could you put all of those together in one change request?
Yeah, so our goal today was to walk you through how to manage both, let's say, a standard core ABAP transports, but also the Cloud TMS as well. If you have to manage any side-by-side Cloud Foundry or any type of SAP extensions that you've built, let's say, on top of BTP. So we can bundle those together within one change request, for example, especially where you have to make core changes, but then also extend side by side. So we do support that with the Cloud TMS. Therefore, for example, when you push your changes into a production environment, you can also promote your ABAP core changes, including any type of BTP extensions or Cloud Foundry that you've made to support that extension.
Well, that's incredibly powerful because I have, I guess we've discussed it in some of our articles, and we just posted on LinkedIn today a new article about this. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing is, in order to maintain a clean core, you have to manage changes that are in multiple different platforms. And that can be, very complicated, especially if you have people working in different tools. Some people are using Jira, some people are using Azure DevOps, some people are using ServiceNow, and you want to coordinate all those changes to make one cohesive, update to your environment. And really, that's what these tools were designed to do. And I think it's a very unique approach and a unique solution. Thank you very much, Waldron, for taking the time to walk us through that. I am going to put up on the screen for anybody. Thank you very much if you have joined us today live. And if you're watching this as a recording, thanks for staying all the way to the end. There's some barcodes up on the screen right now and some links. We have the newsletter that I've been talking about throughout the presentation today. It's called the SAP ALM Navigator, and we cover a wide range of topics. Lots of free tips and useful information that's there. You can go to the LinkedIn page, just search for SAP ALM Navigator, or you can go to our CoreALM page, and this link will take you straight there if you scan the barcode with your phone. From there, you can subscribe, and then you'll be notified for any upcoming newsletters. As we publish them, you'll receive them by email. And then we also have future webinar topics. So if you liked this topic and you want to hear more about these types of topics to help your organization move to the next stage, you can go to corealm.com/resources, and that gives you a list of all of the upcoming webinar topics that we do have. Or if you want to speak to us directly about your particular issues, we do offer free proof of concept trials for people that, that's a guided, test that we can make sure that this is going to work in your environment before you have to do any type of commitment. So please do connect with us. If you even just have a basic question that you want to have answered, could be, about our subject, but not necessarily about our products, don't hesitate to reach out. You can either go to our website and corealm.com and click on the Talk to an Expert button in the top right corner of the screen and just fill out the form, or you just scan this barcode, go to free consultation, and then lots of people get in touch with us that way. And that's how we can serve you quickly. Thank you again, Waldron. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you all for taking your time with us. We greatly appreciate it. Please stay in touch with us. Don't hesitate to connect on LinkedIn and reach out if you have topics that you'd like for us to cover. Feel free to mention those as well. And we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.